Hello folks and welcome back. Today we're going to turn detective, and yes, we're going to be investigating your soil pH and finding out what that means to you as a gardener and how that helps or deters you from growing plants. So I'm going to get you to make your own home DIY soil testing kit, because we can't go down to our garden centres and buy a kit, and you'll find out that you've got everything in your home to actually create this anyway. So why would you go and buy one? So soil pH really does matter, but there's a whole host of things that has a pH. So apples have a pH, pears, plums, even water has a pH. And what we're given is a logarithmic scale to actually measure that pH on. Now don't go away, don't turn off, because we're not going to deal with it. All we need to know is that we're given a figure to actually measure pH from. And that scale is measured from 0 to 14. And it is literally the amount of hydrogen ions that are available to our plants. And that's what pH stands for, potential hydrogen. Now, 0 to 14 is the scale we're given. 6.5 is around about neutral, which is the ideal thing that we want. Anything that's below that is acidic, and anything that's above that is alkaline. There you go, there's a scientific bit all over and done with. So now we can get on with getting our hands into some soil and testing our soil pH. So essentially, when we're growing plants, we're dealing with the pH 4 to 8. So 6.5, as I said a little earlier, is the ideal place where we want to be growing our plants. But in real terms, plants like a little bit of acidity. So 6.5 to around about 7 is where we want to be. So why does it matter? Well, if you place an acid-loving plant into an alkaline soil, what you're doing is restricting the essential nutrients that they actually need to grow, and effectively you open them up to diseases. Ultimately, plants can die, so that's why pH is really, really important. So here we go. Here's your DIY kit, what you need to bring together to create your DIY pH testing kit. First of all, I've got 2 takeaway trays that I've actually filled with around about 1/4 of a trowel full of soil. Now I've gone down about a trowel's depth and then taken soil from there. So 1/4 of a trowel in each of your takeaway trays. You will need 2 of these little cups. Any cup will do really, but you'll need 2 cups to actually carry out your investigation. You will also need some baking powder or bicarbonate of soda. It's the same thing, folks. It's just that bicarbonate of soda has not got a rising agent in it. You will need some white vinegar, cider vinegar. Brown vinegar's okay, but white vinegar is better. And you will also need some distilled water or deionized water. This has got no lime in it. Now, if you're struggling to buy this in lockdown, then you can actually defrost your fridge, okay? And that will give you deionized water. So there you go, there's another job for you to do in lockdown. Okay, so first of all, we're going to test this soil for alkalinity. And what we're going to do is we're going to take one of the trays and we're going to take some vinegar and we're going to fill half of the cup with some white vinegar. Now, as we're lab professors, we're following lab rules for here, folks. We're doing it in a well-ventilated environment and always place the cap back onto our solution bottles. And this is going to react, because this is acidic. Anything that's alkaline in this particular soil will react, and you should see some bubbles. First of all, there might be some air bubbles, but secondly, if we see bubbles, then it'll give us a measure of how alkaline this soil is. And this is quite simple. We pour it in, folks, give it a little mix, and there you go. So there are some air bubbles, that may well be some air bubbles, and there are a little bit of popping now, look, but essentially that's not a lot at all. If that was to bubble away quite heavily, then you could say you've got an alkaline soil, around about pH 7 to 8. And that gives you sort of indication of the things you need to do with your soil and what you might be able to grow in there. So there's the alkaline test. Now, the acid test we come on to next, and we take the other pot of soil, and this is where the kids will actually love getting involved in this little investigation. We're going to make a mud pie. So we take our distilled water and we tip it in and we make it muddy, folks. Again, take my mixing stick, give it a really good mix round, make it muddy. Now we take a quarter of a cup of the baking soda, and baking soda is alkaline, so again it'll do the opposite to the alkaline test. This will react with anything that's acidic in the actual soil that we've got here, and again we're listening for hissing and listening for bubbles, so we just pour it in and we give that a little bit of a mix. And then we just wait for 2 seconds. And can we hear any hissing? Yeah, we can. I hope you can hear hissing. So, depending on how fierce that hissing is, then at the end of the day, you can sort of say how acid that particular soil is. And this particular soil, I'd estimate, because that's not too bad actually, folks, around about 6 to 5.5. If it's really hissing and fizzing, then it could be even down to 4.5, even down to 4. So I think I've got a decent sort of soil here, a little bit on the acid side, around about what we actually need to grow a whole range of plants. Now if you don't hear any hissing, you don't hear any bubbles from your experiments, then effectively you've got a neutral soil. And there's your DIY pH testing kit. You can now go out into the garden and actually test your soil and tell whether you've got acid, alkaline or a neutral soil, and effectively deal with the plants that you've actually got to create your garden space, whether it be veg, whether it be ornamental plants, whatever. You never ever need to buy a pH testing kit again. So there we are, folks. There's more homemade tips to come. Things that you've got in your home that you can use and utilise while we're in lockdown, and when we're out of lockdown, why not do the same things again? Save you a lot of money. Thanks again for listening, keep watching, but most of all, keep gardening.